Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Stickers and Scuffs podcast with Cam K, Graydon Bunn, presented by our good buddy Remax Jack. Today, the driver of the 56 for Jim Bray Racing in the NASCAR Pinty series. We thought he was just going to join us for a couple road courses last year, and he ended up doing a lot of ovals as well. Malcolm Strachan is here. Malcolm, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, this was something that we definitely wanted to have you on the show because exactly what I just mentioned. You were going to show up, but it seemed like you're only going to be there for CTMP, and then all of a sudden they're wheeling out the old Impala for you, and you're running on Flamborough, and then you did the triple header at Delaware Speedway. So let's talk about how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it was all very last minute. Jim and I were talking about trying to put it together, and Jim said that he had a car. It was pieces of a car, and so anyway, when I put it together last minute, he said, "Oh man, I wish you'd told me this a week or two ago." And so anyway, the crew put together a miracle. I even went out there and pulled an all-nighter with them before it, getting the car ready to go. Sam's car was sitting there looking pretty, and mine was in bits and pieces. So we all worked together and got it together. And it's handled really well, but we had some engine issues all the way through CTMP. And so that's why I stopped a couple times for carburetor change and stuff like that, and then a few other things. But man, those guys worked so hard to get that car put together, and then a week later turned it into an oval track car, which it wasn't designed to be. And then 2 weeks later, they found they had this old oval chassis in the back of the shop. And they said, "Well, you ran well enough at Flamborough with a road course car, hastily converted road course car, that we'd like to put you in an oval chassis." So they pulled that out, took all the stuff out of the Impala, put that in the Challenger, and made turning left a little easier, I have to say.
That Cam and I talked about it. I know through CTMP, and then again we were at Delaware too, and we were like, that's the same car that was at CTMP. And
yeah, it was. Yeah,
it's something. It's a compliment when I say it. It's an old school racer feel where like it's just like Jim Bray in himself is the oldest of old school, right?
Oh, he is, absolutely.
So when you're setting up a car for an oval, you're not just setting up the oval car, you're setting up the road course for the oval car.
Yeah, and that was
you guys are all hands on and all hands on deck there.
Yeah, no, they pulled as many miracles as they could to try to get that road course car to turn left. It didn't do too badly, I have to say. They couldn't get what is it, in Pinty's, I think you're allowed 55% left side weight, and we were only able to get 52.5, which, me coming from road courses, I didn't know too much about that. But when you tell that to a seasoned oval veteran and you tell them you only got 52.5%, they're like, what are you even doing? So we did our best. Jeff Wernham was putting some interesting setups into the car to try to get it to rotate, and it was fun. It was definitely a baptism of fire, because I admittedly don't have a lot of oval track experience myself. So jumping into that car was and jumping in at Flamborough, which is not an easy track, and jumping in with Canada's best oval racers, it's not the easiest place to learn.
And we were watching, man. It was, if nothing else, absolutely fun watching you like wheel that thing, because man, you were at the office.
I was trying for sure.
Well, this is what's kind of interesting is that you had made a start, I want to say it was a couple years ago for Jim, and you gotten up to like, I think it was like fifth, sixth place in the race.
With the pit stops, I ended up, I was up to about second, but I mean, by the time everything worked out, like I was running fairly well in the top 10, but yeah, with pit stops, it was second, but doesn't count.
Either way, you're up there, and like your very first start in And we'll, I think Jim would say that maybe his equipment's not, the top of the line,
Yeah.
but you guys are running up there. You're passing cars, and how did that happen?
Well, okay. The thing is, I actually did my first race with him back in 2009. He gave me a shot at Montreal when it was the Canadian Tire Series.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah, so I went into that having never driven I was going to say Pinty's car. I guess it was Canadian Tire Series then, but still, never driven a car of that level. And I'd driven cars with bias ply tires before, and I'd driven like various types of cars. So in my head, I was trying to piece together what it would be like. Never been to Montreal before, very limited practice and stuff. So that weekend was a bit of a struggle. But then, yeah, in 2018, got another shot with him, ended up 9th in that one. And then in 2019, ran again with him. But again, we didn't really have any testing. So basically, it was almost like 2018 was the test for 2019. And the setup changes that we made, where I wanted the brake balance, the springs and bar settings that I wanted to kind of adapt the car a little bit more to my driving style. And we just, the thing is Mike, who ended up being Sam's crew chief this past year, he and I worked really well together in 2018, 2019, setting up the car, working through everything, trying to figure out how we can extract that last little bit out of it. And that's why we were able to get kind of 12th in qualifying. Like, the engine was strong, I have to say. The engine was strong. I went side by side up with DJ Kennington up the back straight in 2019. And I don't think Kennington is ever wanting for horsepower. So if we were able to run side by side with him, then the engine ain't bad. But yeah, we worked together, got the car handling well, and got it hustling through the corners. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think actually 2019 was one of the most fun times I've ever had in a race car. Just being up there, battling at the sharp end, and battling with some of Canada's best racing drivers. It's good. It was fun.
Did you always want to go this route?
To be honest, I always had my eyes on sports car racing, and like, I still love it. Sports car racing is awesome stuff. But the first time I got a shot at trying a Pinty's car, I was like, wow, this thing's so much fun. It's just the dog box with no clutch, just banging through the gears.
Yes.
The power, the bias ply tires. Like, I've raced a bunch of cars with bias ply tires before, and basically the way to go fast on them is you pretty much have to drift, and it's just it's just way too much fun. And so anyway, I just always wanted to get back into it, and really wanted to do more of that, not just the road courses. So when this opportunity came up to do some oval racing, I thought, okay, sure, yeah, I'm in. And yeah, it was intense. It was a lot of fun.
Who'd have thought that the 2021 Bray Autosport lineup of drivers would be the road race aces, right?
It's funny. The funny thing is for Sam and I to be teammates, our dads actually raced against each other back in 1986 in the Players Challenge Series. So,
nice.
Dude, you beat me to it. I was gonna ask
you were gonna pull that out.
No, that's
yeah.
awesome. Like,
Yeah.
way to get on that.
Yeah. But so it was cool. And I mean, hanging out with Sam, actually, Sam and I don't live that far from each other. We bump into each other on the street sometimes. And he's just a super nice guy, and he obviously gets it from his dad, because his dad has to be the nicest man in motorsports. So yeah, it's hanging out with them in the pits and kind of working together and talking about setups and stuff, and driving styles, and how we can both adapt to these cars and make the cars adapt to us, and try to figure out the best way forward. It was great working with them.
So you've talked about racing on bias plies, and you're no stranger to victory lane in the Canadian Touring Car Championships. What is your racing resume? What's your career path look like, Malcolm?
Well, I started out in karts when I was 10, and moved up through that. Got into sports car racing when I was 16, and then raced mostly just in Ontario and Quebec. Never really had the budget to go down and race in big American series. I kind of dipped my toe in the pro waters here and there, like a race in Coney Challenge, a race in a series called American GT, and then did a race in sorry, I think I said Coney Challenge. And so anyway, just like bits and pieces here and there where I would get an opportunity, and usually never got an opportunity to jump in front running cars. And then I ran into an old friend, Albert, who runs Speedstar Motorsport. And he basically, I saw him at a track day, and he said, "Hey, how's it going?" And we caught up a little bit. And then he said, "So, are you still fast?" And I'm like, I mean, I like to think so. And he says, "Do you crash cars?" And I'm like, as little as possible. Like, okay, I'd like to give you a test in a Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I love the guy, but someone gives you a free test in a car that's several $1,000s an hour to run. Usually those opportunities are easier said than done. So anyway, came time, I got the call saying, "Yep, be at the track on this day." And I thought, okay, sweet. So I show up and find out that it's not just a test, but it's a head-to-head test against another driver. So I'm like, okay, pressure's on. Luckily for me, it was in the rain, and I love racing in the rain. So I got a really good opportunity to kind of show what I could do in the rain, and ended up coming out on top, which was awesome. And I was really hoping that was going to lead to a ride in GT3 Cup, but unfortunately, the budget wasn't quite there. But it gave me an awesome opportunity to work with the team the next year as their coach, as well as do all the testing for the car to set it up to make sure that when the engineer was making a change on the car, he would have a good idea of what that change actually results on the car, and he can see with a stopwatch someone consistent who can give him good feedback. He can get the correlation between, okay, when I make a bar change so much, how does it actually affect the driver? And then that led to the opportunity to race the Audi R8 in the GT4 class. So that was how that all went. It's I mean, there were several years where I was knocking on doors trying to get sponsorship, and just didn't go anywhere. And then you bump into someone at a track day and they give you a shot. So it's the world is a strange place, that's for sure.
That's the way of the racing world, it seems like, regardless of your discipline, right?
It totally is. It totally is. I've been fortunate enough to cross paths and make friends with amazing people like Jim Bray or like Albert from Speedstar, and people who have given me opportunities, thinking like, okay, I see something in you, kind of like you as a person too. So okay, let's see if we can make something happen. And yeah, I've thrived upon those opportunities, and hope to do a little more of that in the future too.
Well, the opportunities, like you had mentioned before, I'm very curious how that happened, the bridge from the sports car running to meeting Jim Bray and getting to run with Jim. How did that happen?
I think, to be honest, I think how we crossed paths is, of course, Jim is a NASCAR legend himself. Has run down at Daytona back in the 50s. Like, you look him up, and the history is incredible. And so anyway, my dad, when he was a kid, got into his very first form of motorsports was stock car racing, and raced at places like Shannonville when it was a dirt oval, and running at Kingston Speedway and stuff like that. So he raced all kinds of different things, and then later on in life wanted to get kind of back to where he grew up, and that's stock car racing. So he built a 1962 Ford Galaxy, like an old school Grand National car, That car is a blast to drive, by the way. It's so awesome. So anyway, I think he ended up connecting with Jim at some point, and dads tend to be pretty proud of their sons. So I think my dad kind of talked me up a fair bit. So Jim and I ended up meeting, ended up getting along, and that's when he gave me the shot and at Montreal in 2009. And we were running pretty well. I think we were kind of knocking on the top 10. And unfortunately, the upper link on the diff broke on the rear end. So unfortunately, fortunately, it wasn't nearly as bad as when that happened to Joey Hansen that year, and he went off and had a big one at CTMP. Thankfully, I felt it just before the braking zone, so it didn't do anything massively untoward. But so yeah, it was a DNF, and Jim always wanted to try to get me behind the wheel to kind of give me another opportunity since that one didn't pan out. And yeah, then we ended up with a top 10 in 2018 at CTMP. So that really kind of our team kind of gelled at that point. And yeah, he's always been, he gives me phone calls regularly, and I'm very fortunate to to get those phone calls and yeah, try to put something together so that we can all get up there and keep racing.
It wouldn't be a text from Jim. It'd definitely be a phone call.
No, definitely not a text. No, I
was behind Jim when we were at CTMP in the summertime to get our pass, like our media credentials. And Jim had his big old checkbook and everything to come and pay everything. Like, when we're talking old school, folks, we're talking old school.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Funny story with Jim is my first interaction with him was for doing the Ontario Sportsman Series Facebook page. And at the same time, I created Jim's personal Facebook page for him. So we had a phone call, and I wasn't expecting a NASCAR legend or just a Canadian motorsport legend as a whole to speak to me. But can I be honest and say that he spoke to me for over an hour and a half on the phone that day? I got to hear all about the Daytona 500 and racing with some of these legendary names. And you're just going, I can't believe that more people don't know about. It almost seems like he's a Canadian legend that really not a lot of people remember or know.
Yeah. I think that time when, if you were a Canadian driver racing down in NASCAR, you didn't really get noticed, and people just didn't pay attention to you. And definitely no fault of Jim's. Like, he was there, he was on the track, he was doing his thing. But yeah, like, he is in the Hall of Fame now, which is absolutely deserved, and couldn't go to a nicer guy. But yeah, I guess just in that time in the 50s and 60s, you're trying to make a go at America's biggest motorsport as a Canadian. You're definitely a bit of an outsider.
So how did you know that 2021 was going to happen, Malcolm?
Just last minute, when I was able to get some last minute sponsorship together, and called up Jim. To be honest, we didn't even know it was fully going to happen until basically the Thursday before the race, knowing that the car was actually going to be ready. I got there, and there was still some work that needed to be done. The engine was on the other side of the shop. Transmission was on a stand. I walked in, and Mike just kind of pointed at a pile of shocks and said, "Okay, put those on the car." So I'm like, "Okay, let's go." And yeah, so it was. I kind of believed, perhaps naively in my heart, that it was going to be a go, but we managed to pull it off, and yeah, their whole team stayed there way too late on my behalf, getting that car ready to go. So it was good. It was good.
I think that's a testament, like what you're saying with Jim himself in the 50s. Like, if you're a Canadian wanting to make it in stock car racing in the 50s, you're doing it for the sheer love and passion of it. You're not doing it for social media exposure and that sort of thing. And I think that's a testament, and it carries through in his team today, where like those guys will, and it's not a big group of guys, if I'm right, Malcolm, that
No, it's
like,
definitely not a big group of guys.
but it's guys that when it comes race time in Ontario, it's a short little season, and they'll throw the kitchen sink at it, and there's 24
Absolutely.
hours in a day, and they'll use every one of them if they need to.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I'm super fortunate to have the backing of our club as well, because to be honest, a lot of Jim's guys were already dedicated to Sam's car. So they were already there. And when Jim and I managed to put this together last minute, he's like, you also got to bring some guys too. So we augmented the team with my friend Chris Cram, our club member, who was my spotter. He had some experience with that, so I'm like, hey, want to come spot for me? And then another our club member, Glenn Call, and his two sons, Jamie and Matt. They dove right into it. Jeff handed one of them a tire temp probe, and the other one a tire pressure gauge, and the kids were looking at the car like, I'm allowed to touch it, and it's like, well, if you don't, no one else will, so to work. And so they dove right in. And then at Delaware, I mean, when I started the third and final race, all the duct tape handiwork was all Jamie. So he went from not ever really working on a race car to helping get mine straight for the last run.
Master body technician.
Exactly. So he can definitely put that on his resume for sure.
Yeah, it's great because as we talked about, the amount of carnage that Delaware weekend saw.
Yeah.
And that was the first race, Malcolm. And we were going, I remember saying to Graydon, and I was so bummed because was it either the first or the second race where you got that damage? And yep. I said to Graydon, I'm like, he's done. Like, he can't.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was done like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. I was like, there's no way he's coming back out for the second race, right? Because I saw you pull it off, and all of a sudden back out for the, and I'm like,
and it was close. It was, yeah.
Yeah, because you were out there.
They worked some miracles between those 2 races, that's for sure.
You made it back out. Cole Powell made it back out after mechanical problems. Alex made it back out with like half his car missing. Like, people don't understand kind of the ability that you can do that with these cars. Like,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so when we first set our eyes on Delaware Speedway for the very first time this year, experiencing it live, it was an absolute thrill. What was it like driving on that track?
It was great. It was a cool track. It felt a bit more like road racing because the corners aren't perfect. There's a bunch of different ways that you can look at them. So, but that also kind of worked a little bit against me because in road racing, my driving style is I really like to turn the car with trail braking. So really using the brake to rotate the car. So when we were having handling issues, I wasn't really able to diagnose it because I was trying to compensate with using the brake. So I was dialing in more rear brake, and so I was trying to make it work using the brake, but we needed to go and change setup. So we just kind of ran out of time there. So that was on the Friday, and we'd been chasing a miss in the engine all the way from CTMP. So we had the issue where we thought it was like, maybe it's the carburetor. So first race CTMP, they changed the carburetor, and I don't know how we almost only went down a lap.
That's impressive.
Carburetor change. We were a couple seconds shy of that, but ended up going down 2 laps. So then we ruled that out because the same thing happened. And then we put in different ignition boxes, and then the same thing happened. And then we tried mounting them up higher off the firewall just in case it was exhaust heat that was causing it. And then it still happened. And so we were chasing this miss, and it happened all the way through Flamborough. And even into the Friday at Delaware. And finally, John Saunders came and had a look at it, and he's like, yeah, I think that's a bit of oil fouling on the one plug there. So the guys decided to take that engine out, and they had this other engine that was like 16 races old or something like that sitting in the back of the shop. It was due to be rebuilt. So they're like, well, let's toss that in it, see if it helps. And if it wasn't like 150 horsepower more, it's suddenly coming out of the corners. It was like, whoa, this thing is hauling the mail. So anyway, that of course, the way we set up the car on the Friday at Delaware versus how it handled on Sunday with 150 horsepower more, now suddenly you've got to change the setup because it's not exiting the same way. And if you're changing the setup for that, like you got to change the setup going on the way into the corner. So everything that we thought we learned in practice on Friday, none of it really translated to Sunday. So it was a blessing in a disguise, but the car was faster. So I was definitely happy with that. But we made a big setup change just before qualifying. And I'm like, just loosen it up and let's see if I can send it in there, and I'll use brake bias to figure out the rest. And it worked. And the funny thing is after the first race, we had it knocked the rear end loose. It snapped a mount. And so anyway, they threw something in, and they literally just measured the rear end with a measuring tape kind of by eye. It was like, okay, that's going to have to be good enough. Like, head out for the last race. And so anyway, went out there, and I guess Jeff has a really good eye because the car felt amazing. And I think I turned one of my fastest laps of the weekend without any front body work and a rear end that Jeff set up by eye. So yeah, car was fantastic, and it was really making progress, and it was running inside the top 10, but yeah, got caught up with a little bit of rubbing that I wasn't expecting, because there were some people that I was giving some space for, but it wasn't always returned. But these things happen, and that put paid to the last race, which I was really hoping for, because everything had been building all weekend long to that last race for me. So it was definitely heartbreaking. But
yeah.
But man, in terms of everyone, I think it was culminating for everyone, because if there was a quarter of a car width, someone was diving up the inside and going there. Everyone was trying 12 tenths. Like it was pretty crazy out there.
It's a grinder.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, Jim fortunately said, like, if you come back with anything broken on the race car, the bodywork's the cheapest to replace. So come back with broken bodywork, I'm fine. Come back with a broken engine, that's going to be pricey, but come back with no front on the car, then whatever. We can get a new one.
It's funny because the one thing we kind of, you look at when drivers that are kind of somewhat newer show up, and especially like a road course driver running on almost for the first time, you'd expect maybe them to have a bit of a hard time, but you relatively picked it up pretty easily. And one of the things that is very noticeable is coming home with a clean car. And yeah, Delaware was a little bit different, but for the most part, that wasn't something that you didn't cause that. You kind of just got involved because basically everybody was.
I mean, yeah, I don't think anyone had a straight body panel on their car after that weekend. The elbows out for sure.
The adapting between the adjusting, I guess I'll say, between when you first stepped into the Pinty's car for a road course, and any sort of road course event, compared to running the oval, what was more physically demanding? Because obviously the track differs. At like CTMP, there's elevation changes, there's speed. Yeah. What about the oval? Was there any, like, which one do you find more difficult?
I mean, I think, well, the thing is, I've got a lot of experience on the road courses. So, and so jumping into something like that, I've I've driven some amazing cars at CTMP. I've also driven some really sketchy cars at CTMP. So jumping into something new, I've got enough experience between the well sorted and the not so well sorted that I can kind of figure out, okay, what does this car need to make it work? What do I need to change about my driving to extract the most out of the car? But then what changes do I need to ask for to make the car just go faster? And so that part was, that's just kind of working on a puzzle and figuring that puzzle out. Going over to the oval racing, it's still a puzzle. But instead of having 10 corners to set up for or 15, you have basically one, maybe two corners that you're setting up for, because a lot of ovals, like you've got one corner duplicated at the other end. And yeah, they're a little different, but they're pretty similar. So your setup window goes from being like somewhere in the average of 10 corners to now you've got 1 to 2 corners, and you need to keep that car right in that window. So it takes a lot of feel. And it's one of those things that going from Flamborough and being like a fair bit off the pace and getting to where I got to in Delaware, which was a reasonable bit closer, like that part wasn't the difficult part. The part that I think is going to be the most difficult part is that last half second, like getting right up there in those last few tenths to be up really at the sharp end of the field. That's going to be the hard work. That's where the guys with 10, 15, 20 plus years experience, that's going to be the hard puzzle to crack for sure. And it's so intense. It's so intense. Like oval racing, it never stops, dude. Like you come out of a corner, and by the time the rear tire stops spinning, you're practically braking for the next corner. And it's not like a road course where things kind of string out a little bit. You've got a car in front of you, you've got a car beside you, you've got a car behind you. And if you just like breathe the wrong way for just half a second, like you've got cars flying around you. Like you need to be on the ball all the time. You never get a chance to breathe. Like I was having a tough time even just glancing down at my gauges at Flamborough, just kind of getting used to the intensity of it all. And also not just all of that, like you've got to use your eyes, but you've also got to use your ears, because now your spotter is just going like crazy. So you've got to be listening and making like a mental map of everything that's going on around you. All the while, your crew chief is like, so how's the car feel? And it's like, dude, I'm just trying to stay alive out here. But yeah, so it's the intensity of oval racing is yeah, it got me hooked. I have to say, but yeah.
I'm not I operate and drive a lot of different things, but I'm not a racer per se. But that pucker factor, if you know what I'm talking about, is connected to the brain, and the mental real. Exhaustion has to be a grind.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because the thing is the in terms of car setup, they often say loose is fast, and it's true. Yeah. But what people don't really realize about that is loose means that the car is trying to spin itself out like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8
the ass end's going
per corner. So when you're going into a corner, like the car is dancing, you're doing all of these corrections to keep it from spinning into the wall. So when a car is super fast, it's work at the limit trying to keep it from ending up bent in the wall. So yeah, getting it perfectly set up, like not that we were really like we've just still got some work to do to figure out like what I need to do and what we need to do to the car to kind of get it to work together. But yeah,
that means you're coming back again. Is that right?
I really hope so. I've got some work to do in the off season, but hopefully we can put it all together and make it happen, because I think if we can get a test day or two and make sure that we've got fresh engines in the car and stuff, I think we could turn some heads. I think we have that possibility, because I'm really gelling with the crew.
Turn more heads.
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think I'm making progress in adapting to the cars. I'm making progress in improving communication with the team so that they know what I need, and when I say how much something I need, they know how much that is, because it's really easy to say the car's loose, but by how much? And so how many rounds of wedge do you do? Like, do you do one round? Do you do 5 rounds? Like, at what point at what point of my complaining do they start taking me seriously? So like all of that, like it's how we work together as a team, and I think that's improving. So yeah,
we'd love to see you have another crack at it, just for those reasons you said, because I mean, if you have another season to kind of build on what you did in 2021, who knows what could happen. I mean,
yeah,
like you said, you're just feeling the car out and understanding the communication. Those can all translate to time on the track made up. Absolutely.
And like I said, going back to it, like under no illusions that will be kind of showing everyone up, but because we're up against Canada's best, and it's don't always have, we're a lower budget team. We're definitely underdogs. So it's one of those things that I'm not expecting a miracle to happen, but I think we could turn some heads if we had a full season to work together. So I'm really digging for that.
Well, you know that we'll always try and support as many cars and drivers as we can get on.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's all what we're about here. And obviously you were able to get to the racetrack this year thanks to some great partners. So let's just for a moment, let's talk about your partners.
Absolutely. Sure. So yeah, our club, which I'm at right now, it's a automotive focused social club. It's a fantastic place. A lot of people think it's about the cars, but it's really about the people. The founders here have done a fantastic job at building not only a cool collection of cars, but a really cool collection of people. So it's really easy to fill a club with a whole bunch of members that may or may not be fun to hang out with, but they've built a community here where members join and then they don't want to leave. They renew their memberships year after year because it's good people to hang out with. But then on top of that, we got cool cars. You can see behind me a bunch of neat cars, some of which are members' cars just here on display. Others are part of the fleet that members can use credits to take out for a day or a weekend or whatever. So it's pretty cool. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it
sounds like Graydon's type of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a fantastic place. We're located kind of in the east end of Toronto. Yeah, and the club has a fully stocked wash bay, 2 lift bays if you want to do anything from change the oil to do an engine swap. We've got all that kind of stuff there. We've got a bunch of simulators. I actually do a lot of coaching on the simulators there, helping drivers get better, getting people ready to go to track days, or getting track day enthusiasts kind of on the path towards actually racing. So we have a program here to get enthusiasts into kind of like amateur road racing and endurance racing, where they can kind of get their feet wet in the real thing. So yeah.
Graydon's looking for some openings.
Cool.
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, and then to be honest, Jim Bray was a massive supporter, and yeah, really helpful there with Bray Trailers and Dark Horse Cargo. So they really helped out, and it was not only a team effort on the track and in the pits, but behind the scenes as well.
Absolutely phenomenal to have you on this podcast. I mean, who knew that a conversation about how similar you look like to Charlie Kimball would be the start of a great friendship. And we know that we want to support our Canadian racers as much as possible. So awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And we really do hope to see you on the NASCAR Pinty Series grid next year, especially if there's rain. I really want to see what you guys can do.
I would love that. I would love that. If we could,
and we'll see you tear up GP3R as well. I kind of feel like that would be right down you and your alley there too. So
yeah, no, that's a fun track.
Yeah, we definitely want to have you back on, hopefully while you're doing some races. And we'll have to maybe take SNS on the road and maybe take a tour of that our club and see if we can do some sort of a show there. So
yeah, I'll definitely show you around 100%.
All right.
Awesome.
So that is Malcolm Strachan, everybody, for the Stickers and Scuffs podcast. If you want to get connected with him, you can find him on social media. Definitely there's partnerships available, it sounds like, for next year. So let's try and get him on track. All right. So that's awesome. Cam K, Graydon Bunn signing off. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.